Chapter 1. The child became ill and I didn't know what to do. Nights were always silent in that house since my husband left 5 years ago. Loneliness had become my faithful companion until that precious little one arrived. However, that morning something broke the monotony. When I opened the door to get the newspaper, I found a small basket on the doorstep. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the baby wrapped in blankets, his huge curious eyes staring at me. I picked him up with a mixture of astonishment and tenderness. There was no note, nothing indicating where he came from or who had left him there. I brought him inside, trying to understand the situation. The baby cried softly as if he knew he was in unfamiliar hands. I rocked him, singing a lullaby I used to hum when my daughter was little. It took me a while to calm him, but eventually his eyelids closed, and he fell asleep in my arms. The next morning, as I was making breakfast, someone knocked on the door. It was the police. My heart raced when I saw them. They asked if I had seen a baby, mentioning a report of a missing child. The lie left my lips before I could stop it. No, I haven't seen any baby around here. They left, and guilt began to gnaw at me. What had I done? Why hadn't I told the truth? But every time I looked at the baby, I felt I had made the right decision. There was something about him, an innocence that needed protection. Later, my daughter came to visit me. Always so punctual, so organized. When she saw the baby, her eyes widened with disbelief. Where did this baby come from? She asked, her voice filled with surprise and a touch of irritation. I explained what had happened, hoping she would understand. But her reaction was quite the opposite. You have to turn him over to the authorities, Mom. This is crazy. If you don't do it, I will. I saw through the haze of my own emotions and noticed something in her gaze. Jealousy. She had always been jealous since childhood of anything or anyone that took my attention away from her. The baby started crying again, interrupting our tense conversation. It was a different cry, sharper. I took him to my room, trying to calm him. But something was wrong. I felt his forehead, and it was hot, too hot. Worry settled in my chest. I couldn't take him to the hospital. It would risk him being discovered. I decided to call an old friend, a trusted doctor. When he arrived, he examined the baby carefully. It's just a fever, he said with a reassuring smile. Nothing serious, but he needs to be taken care of properly. He left me some medicine and advice, promising to return the next day to check on him. That night I sat by the makeshift crib, watching the baby breathe slowly. The fever was starting to subside, but the worry didn't go away. What was I going to do? Could I keep him without anyone finding out? And if not, what would happen to him? I looked at the baby, his tiny hand gripping my finger, and felt a renewed determination. I didn't know what the future held for us, but I was willing to face anything to protect him. Chapter 2. The mother claimed the child. The sun was barely peeking out when the phone rang, breaking the morning calm. I answered with a sense of unease. It was the police. We know the baby is with you, said a firm voice on the other end. His mother has come forward. She's remorseful for abandoning him and wants him back. My heart sank. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just wanted to protect him, I replied, my voice trembling. We understand your intention, but the mother has requested to speak with you. Can we arrange to meet for the handover of the child? I agreed, feeling a mix of fear and sadness. I took the baby in my arms and headed to the police station. When we arrived, a young woman stood up from her seat. Her eyes were red, and she looked disheveled. However, when she saw me, Her gaze hardened. You stole him. That baby is mine, she screamed, pointing an accusing finger at me. Please, calm down, the officer intervened. Let's talk calmly. We sat across from each other. I didn't steal him, I said softly. I found him on my doorstep. I just wanted to make sure he was safe. I left him there because I didn't know what else to do, the mother confessed, her voice breaking. I regret it. I want to take him home, but I can't believe someone decided to keep him. I didn't mean any harm, I said, trying to calm her. But I also have to say that it seemed he needed help. Help? She retorted sarcastically. Look at you. Who are you to judge me? You don't even know me. Maybe I don't know you, I responded gently, but I can see the baby needs stability. Are you sure you can provide that? Her eyes filled with tears. You have no idea how hard it is, she murmured. But he is my son. I can't abandon him. The officer intervened again. Ma'am, we understand your concern, but the law is clear. We must return the child to his mother. There are ways to ensure he is well cared for. I felt a pang of desperation. Can I at least say goodbye? I asked, my voice trembling. I approached the baby and cradled him one last time. Take care, little one, I whispered, kissing his forehead. Tears were now falling freely. I handed him to his mother, feeling a part of me break. The mother took the baby without looking me in the eye. Thank you, she said in a whisper before quickly walking away. I returned home alone. The silence was deafening. I sat in the living room surrounded by memories, feeling a deep sadness. Every corner of the house reminded me of the little one, his curious eyes, and his fragile body. Days passed, and the sadness did not diminish. The house, already solitary, now seemed empty. I tried to occupy myself with daily chores, but nothing could fill the void left by the baby. Depression settled in, darkening every thought, making even the simplest tasks feel impossible. I called my daughter, hoping to find some comfort. Mom, you knew you couldn't keep him, she said firmly. It's best for everyone. I know, I replied, though I didn't feel it. But I can't help feeling this way. Time will help, she said, trying to sound reassuring. You have to be strong. I hung up the phone, feeling lonelier than ever. Life went on, but for me, it had stopped the day they took the baby. As time passed, I realized I had to find a way to move on, even though the sadness persisted. But at that moment, all I could do was sit and feel the loss, hoping that one day the pain would ease. The days following the baby's departure were dark and full of doubts. I couldn't stop wondering who had reported my situation to the police. The only person who knew about the baby's presence, besides the doctor, was my daughter. The thought troubled me and ate away at me inside. I decided to invite my daughter for lunch. I needed answers and, more importantly, I needed to confront her. I prepared a simple meal, trying to stay calm even though my mind was in turmoil. When she arrived, I struggled to maintain a calm demeanor. Thank you for coming, I said, serving the table. She sat somewhat tensely. You're welcome, Mom. How are you feeling? She asked, trying to sound understanding. I took a deep breath. I wanted to talk to you about something important. About the baby. The police came very quickly after your visit. Did you call them? She frowned, clearly surprised by the accusation. What? Of course not. How can you think that? Yeah, I don't see another explanation, yeah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You were the only one who knew. Why did you do it? It wasn't me, Mom, she exclaimed, raising her voice. I didn't call them, but you had to turn him over. You couldn't just keep him. And who gave you the right to decide that for me? I replied, feeling anger rise. Do you think I'm not capable of taking care of a baby? That's not what I said, she responded, exasperated. But you can't deny you're not young anymore. Taking care of a baby is not something you can do alone. I'm more capable than you think. I shouted, feeling tears threaten to spill. Maybe you don't understand what it means to have someone who needs you, someone to love and care for. She remained silent for a moment, then whispered, Mom, I know you're lonely since Dad left. But this isn't the solution. And what do you know about my loneliness? I replied, feeling a mix of pain and fury. You've always been so busy with your life, with your problems, that you've never understood how I feel. That's not fair, she exclaimed. I've always tried to help you, but you also have to understand there are limits. The argument grew more intense. Every word exchanged seemed to deepen the rift between us. I think I've heard enough, I said finally. Maybe it's best if you leave. Mom, please don't do this, she pleaded, her eyes filled with tears. You don't understand, I said definitively. You've crossed a line that can't be undone. I need time, and so do you. She got up from the table and, without another word, headed for the door. I watched as she left, feeling that a part of me was breaking again. The door closed with a dull thud, and silence enveloped the house once more. I collapsed into a chair, tears finally falling freely. I had lost the baby and now also my daughter. The loneliness felt deeper than ever, a void that seemed impossible to fill. But I couldn't let guilt consume me. I needed to find a way to move forward, to rebuild my life, even though I didn't know where to start. Chapter 3. I had to do something to get the child back, but I didn't know if it would work. Since the baby left, I couldn't stop thinking about him. His curious little eyes and sweet smile invaded my thoughts every moment. I felt a deep void and constant worry about his well-being. I had never trusted the baby's mother, and my doubts only grew over time. Finally, I decided I had to do something. I hired a private detective to investigate the situation. He was a serious and efficient man with years of experience in similar cases. I explained my suspicions and my desire to ensure the child was safe. A few days passed before the detective called with news. I've been watching the mother, he said. And I've found something you should know. We met in a discreet cafe, away from curious eyes. The mother leaves the baby alone for hours, he informed me gravely. I've recorded several occasions when she leaves the house, and the child is left alone, crying non-stop. He showed me photos and recordings, clear evidence of neglect. I felt a mix of anger and sadness seeing the little one in those conditions. What can we do? I asked, my voice trembling. I've already notified social services, he replied. They will take care of the rest. A few days later, social services intervened and took the child. They moved him to an orphanage, a place that, though not ideal, at least guaranteed his safety. But the story didn't end there. One afternoon, I heard loud banging on the door. When I opened it, I came face to face with the baby's mother. Her eyes were full of rage, and her face contorted with anger. You are to blame for all this, as she screamed, pushing the door forcefully. Give me back my son. I tried to remain calm. I'm not the one who took him from you, I replied. It was social services. Your behavior. My behavior is none of your business, she interrupted, pushing the door harder. You meddled in my life. It's all your fault. I just want what's best for the child, I said, trying to reason with her. He needs care that you're not giving him. Don't tell me how to take care of my child, as she screamed, trying to force the door. You have no right. The situation grew increasingly tense. Please, calm down, I tried to soothe her. We can resolve this civilly. There's nothing civil about what you did, she spat with venom. We'll see each other in court. I'm going to get my son back, and you will pay for this. Finally, she left, leaving me shaking with fear and anxiety. I knew I was facing a difficult and painful legal battle. But I was determined to fight for the child's well-being. The following days were filled with preparations. I hired a lawyer and gathered all the evidence the detective had collected. The photos, the videos, the records. Everything to prove that the child needed a safe and stable home. The trial was an exhausting process. The baby's mother arrived with an aggressive legal team, ready to fight tooth and nail. But we had the truth on our side. In court, the mother shouted and cried, accusing me of ruining her life. She has no right, she exclaimed, pointing at me. She's a meddler who wants to steal my child. My lawyer stood up calmly and determinedly. Your Honor, we have clear evidence of the mother's neglect, he said, presenting the evidence. The child was left alone for hours on multiple occasions, putting his well-being at risk. The images and videos were shown to the judge. The baby's crying, the loneliness in his gaze, all were recorded. I felt a knot in my stomach seeing those images again, but also a spark of hope. The truth was coming to light. The mother tried to defend herself, claiming she had personal problems and was trying to improve. But the evidence was overwhelming. The judge listened attentively to both sides before making a decision. After reviewing all the evidence, the judge said, it is clear that the child has been a victim of neglect. Social services acted correctly in removing the child from the mother's home. Until she can prove she is capable of properly caring for him, the child will remain in state custody. The baby's mother screamed in frustration, while I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I knew this wasn't the perfect solution, but at least the child would be safe. Finally, the judge spoke. After reviewing all the evidence and testimonies presented, I have reached a decision. This court must act in the best interest of the child. Although the biological mother has shown a desire to improve, the evidence of neglect is concerning. The judge paused, looking directly at the mother. For now, the child will be placed in the custody of the lady. This will provide a stable and safe environment, while the mother works on her personal issues and demonstrates her ability to care adequately for the child. I felt a wave of relief and emotion. I could hardly believe it. The child would come to live with me. However, the baby's mother reacted with anger. This is not fair, she shouted, but the judge maintained his firm decision. Leaving the court, I went to the orphanage to pick up the child. Seeing him with his big innocent eyes, I felt all the effort had been worth it. Let's go home, I whispered, and he smiled at me as if he understood. The first days were a mix of joy and challenge. Adapting to a new life together was not easy, but each small moment of connection filled me with happiness. However, the baby's mother did not accept the judge's decision easily. She appeared several times at my house, shouting and threatening. Give me back my son, she insisted, trying to force her way in. I called the police and obtained a restraining order. The situation was tense and dangerous, and I constantly worried about the child's safety. Fortunately, the restraining order seemed to have an effect. The mother stopped appearing, and gradually peace returned to our lives. However, the fear was always present, and the sadness for the mother's situation never completely disappeared. Over time, I began to repair my relationship with my daughter. The letter I had written, though not immediately responded to, had planted a seed. One day, without warning, she arrived at my door. "Mom, I've been thinking about everything," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "Yeah, I know it's been difficult times, and I want to try to fix things." We sat down and talked for hours, addressing old resentments and misunderstandings. It was a difficult but necessary conversation. I felt the weight of the past months start to lift, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. The little one quickly adapted to his new life with me. His laughter filled the house with a joy I hadn't felt in years. Every day was a new adventure, and seeing his growth and happiness gave me the strength to keep going. My daughter began visiting us regularly. Although initially cautious, she soon grew fond of the child. Her visits became a routine, and slowly our relationship strengthened. We found a new balance, and the child's presence acted as a bridge that brought us closer together. Over time, life acquired a new normality. The house no longer felt empty, and my heart filled with love every time the child called me Mom. I knew I was not his biological mother, but the bond we had formed was deep and true.